Welcome to the Speed Climbing Podcast. I'm your host, Josh, and I have a great, very special guest today on the show, American record holder, John Brosler.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So story I wanted to get into right away was actually this. You're a special guest for me because you're the first American speed climber that I really started following about 3 years ago, and I'll tell you why. When I started the website Speed-Climbing.com, I shot an email out to John News, and that was when John was director of high performance. And I was like, hey, this is going to be in the Olympics. Traditionally, in American gyms, speed climbing is like the cousin that no one talks about. It's like, it's kind of looked down on, and like even like local, like at my local gyms, like the coaches like, it's not really climbing, like we never practice it, we don't do anything with it. When it comes to nationals, we throw it up for about 2 weeks beforehand just so the kids are used to it so they can give it a good shot when they go to nationals. So like from a coach and like fan standpoint, like I was concerned it's going to be in the Olympics. US competitors are going to compete at it. I wanted to know like developmentally like what's going on, and he took like an hour and a half out of his day and got on a phone call with me and just discussed like his mindset on it. And he brought you up as one of the up and comers that he was really excited about. So that was the first time I heard about you. So this is just great to have you on because I've been following you for a little bit now, and not in a creepy way, like not actually following you.
No, cool. Yeah, thank you so much. That means a lot. That's cool.
All right, so the season's over.
Yeah.
Tell me
Um,
about it. Tell me the highs, tell me the lows. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty relieved, not gonna lie. It's a long season. We kind of like, I don't know, I guess last year it was not short, but like there were way fewer comps because like things were like starting to open back up again. And um it was it kind of felt like it got a big break from COVID, and then like just a few comps like kind of like sprinkled in there last year. But this was like, I mean, a lot of travel for like 6 months, 8 months out of the year. And it was a lot, but it was really, really fun. I think um my favorite comps were probably like the Salt Lake City ones, of course. Those are like always like home crowd, like you get to sleep in your own bed, use your
That's
own
big.
coffee. Yeah, use your own coffee machine, like just like do a little like daily commute to this park that like I drive by every day, and like there's a
Mhm.
World Cup there. And I was like, oh my God, oh, this is sick. This
Yeah.
is ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. Anytime that you don't have to adjust to a new time zone to like adjust your training schedule to, that's nice.
Yeah, that's a plus for sure also. And like we were all like training in like Momentum, which is where I go pretty much every day, and there were like athletes from all over, and we had these like big sessions between the comps, and it was definitely like unlike any kind of speed session that I've ever had before. And it was just because there was a comp in our city, and I was like, this is cool.
That's
This is
so
really
that's
sick.
so awesome. That's one thing I love about the speed climbing community is that in between the comps, like it happened with Jakarta when you were all out there getting in awesome sessions with the fastest climbers on a great wall. It was like 4 lanes wide, like additional areas to practice as well. It looked like from the videos that I saw. Compared to a lot of other like individual race sports, so track and field, etc., you don't really see like competitors coming together and training together like that because like there's too many egos involved, and like it's not like a brotherhood that it really seems like speed climbing is. So from a fan standpoint, that is awesome to see all the content that you all put out when you're doing those little training sessions together.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And it's like, I mean, climbing is a very like community oriented sport. And I
Mhm.
think that's kind of definitely carries over to speed climbing as well.
Excellent. So you mentioned your favorite competition was probably Salt Lake City, with the Salt Lake City comps. Is that also like your favorite venue because it's at home, or do you have like or do one of the World Cups just stand out as like the one that like I need to go back there?
Oh man, I think like anytime we get to go to a new place, it's really exciting because like I don't know, all the cities are the same year after year for like generally speaking, that's how it
Mhm.
is. And that's not to say those venues aren't cool, but like when we got to go to Korea in May, that was really special. That was really, really fun. And then Jakarta, of course, is a new venue and
Mhm.
new place that I'd never been to. So I just like was super caught up in like enjoying the atmosphere there, and kind of that was my first time in like Southeast Asia. And so it just like kind of being in that culture and environment for the first time was really, really cool for me.
That's
And then,
awesome.
of course, like, I mean, can't not mention like Chamonix, like right up in the square, like Mont Blanc in the background, like super historic event. Like it's been huge for so long, and that's always a special place to be too.
Nice. And then you guys got to climb in the quarry at Edinburgh. Like,
Yeah, that's true. That place is wild. That I remember when I was still like a little youth climber on Team Texas. There was an older girl that competed in speed as I guess she was a youth B at the time, but she she was the speed world champion, and the competition was held at that venue in Edinburgh. And so I like little me was like looking at that wall going, wow, that's so sick. Youth Worlds was there. Someone from my team won. And like finally, like what, 10, 15, 12 years later, I'm like going myself and like seeing it. And that was pretty special too.
that's awesome. Speaking of Texas, what's in the water down there? Why are all you so fast on the wall?
I wish I could tell you. I think the program in Texas like definitely emphasizes speed climbing more than anywhere else that I've been. Maybe like Atlanta is the exception, but like Team Texas and the gyms and the youth team just get really, really they put a lot of attention into it. And let's see, when I was a young kid growing up on that team, there was a speed climbing coach. His name was Stan. And I don't know how many other youth teams like put the effort in to go like, okay, we're going to have a dedicated coach just for speed climbing. And I think like that was part of the reason why I got really psyched. And then I started coaching a little bit myself, and some of the other kids got psyched. And then when I moved away, one of the other guys that was doing speed down there took over, and he's been doing a really good job. And I think it's just kind of gone from there.
Nice.
And yeah,
That's
it's cool to
excellent.
be part of that legacy, like kind of like almost developing a sport kind of just like in one region that's now expanded to, I don't know, we've got Merritt and Sam Watson and like all these other climbers that are so talented.
Yeah, that's great that you're on like on the ground floor for that, helping that build up from the start. And the other good thing about it is like as speed climbing becomes, more and more popular, like you see all the good athletes coming out of Texas, and that's just going to cause other areas to have to raise their game up if they're going to want to compete. And so that's just I saw how much talent's coming out of Texas. It's like there's got to be a secret down there, and it seems cultural. Seems just speed climbing is accepted as like this is a valid sport, and you're going to get exposed to it if you want to, and if you want to, we can train you as fast as you want to get, basically.
Yeah, no, it's just psych. I mean that's you nailed it. That's basically it. Yeah.
Excellent. So talking about like little, training, like you came up from the youth scene, etc. I hope you don't mind. I dive into training a little early into this conversation, but I just kind of want to get a little bit of information. Like, what does your training look like? Like, how do you set that up for like the year? I know you're done with competitions right now, so you're probably in a rest period. But what does that look like? As you ramp up your training, as you go through the World Cups, and kind of how you like manage your load going through those World Cups so you can keep performing.
Yeah. I think the it's changed to become like much more organized and like scientific the past couple of years, like kind of since like we had the COVID shutdown and it got added to the Olympics. And I mean, it kind of has to be. You got to be on your game, planning out months, weeks when you're peaking, when you're tapering, when you're resting. Things like that become so much more important. And it's also become much more speed climbing specific. And so like in 2019, I was trying for the combined. And then when speed was added as a standalone sport, I was like, okay, you got to specialize if you want to be competitive these days. So
right.
Making that transition has been another change for me. Like, I guess that was a couple of years ago. But other than that, it's a lot of just basic kind of strength training principles, and then combining those with like kind of how I know how to train on the wall, like little technique things, like drills, like, I don't know, target practice or doubles or fast laps or whatever I'm deciding to do that day based on the phase of training I'm in. All gets organized really, really early in the year. And so I think like off season, like now I'm resting for sure, but like as we get a little bit closer, I'll probably do like a bit of a strength training phase for like 6 weeks or so. And it's just like basic lifts and a lot of laps on the wall for sure. And then as I get closer to competitions, I kind of like trade that in for more power based exercises. So like low reps, high intensity, maybe fewer laps per session that I'm climbing on the wall, and focusing on like very quality, like fast runs instead of necessarily quantity, I guess.
Sure.
And then it just kind of like follows like the competition schedule, you know? And so I'll like taper so I can peak for like one weekend, and then I'll come home and fit like another little like training cycle in, and then I'll try to peak for like the next ones, and so on and so forth. And it's just kind of fitting in where you can, like heavy training, as long as you can taper with enough time before the next event.
Yeah, because I mean, with the World Cup schedule, like sometimes you're gonna have like 3 competitions like kind of bunched together, and then you got like a month off. And I assume, I mean, during those like 3 or 4 weeks that you have before your next competition, you're going through essentially a whole nother training phase there, where you're gonna probably ramp up volume a little bit and then give yourself a little bit of a taper before the next competition.
Yeah. Well, as much of a training phase as you can fit in also. But the back-to-back weekends can be really tricky because you can't hold like a peak for very, very long. It's like, so you got to manage like, okay, how do I stay rested, but also not like rest too much, you know?
Right.
And so like for this summer, we had Villar, and the next weekend Chamonix, and then the following weekend was the World Games in Alabama. And so like normally I would probably take like 2 days off before a big competition, but because of those 3 back-to-back weekends, it would have turned into too much rest if I had taken 2 days off before every single one.
Sure.
And so that was something I had to change, just to make sure that I was staying fit for a longer period of time and get as many sessions in as I could with all the travel and the comps bunched together too.
Yeah, because that's the other part. Like if you're traveling, you were in Europe, now I got to come back for the World Games, you know, that travel takes a toll on you. Like one of the things I used to tell my athletes, you know, stress is stress. If you're traveling and you're stressed out, or you're working out and you're stressed out, or you're having relationship issues and you're stressed out, like your body doesn't really tell a whole lot of difference, unless, you know, aside from the damage that you're doing to your muscles from working out. But so like stress management becomes a huge part of being an athlete as well, like learning how to program so that way you can keep your stress low leading up into that competition. So you had mentioned shoot, I just lost my train of thought. Okay, so mentioned, really focusing on those high power, like highly specific moves, you know, working out with high intensity and less reps, so less fatigue. How many days per week are you doing those, like, you know, are you on the wall? How many days a week are you doing those high intensity lifts?
I think it turns into like 3 or 4 days a week, but it all kind of depends on like the phase, you know. So if I'm doing a power phase, like those high intensity days will come down in frequency, you know, and I'll just like focus on the intensity instead of like the volume.
Sure.
And then if I'm doing like more of a strength phase or a volume phase, it would maybe be 5 times a week, 4 or 5 times a week. And it all just depends on like the principles of like whatever kind of like what's the word? Periodized.
The periodization.
Yeah. Whatever kind of like training period or phase that you're doing, you have to adjust your workouts accordingly, and like your frequency and intensity like that.
Yep.
That's the main thing that changes throughout during those phases.
And then you'd mentioned that for your strength and conditioning, like you do a lot of just you said, like, you know, classic strength and conditioning. So are you talking like barbell work? You doing more dumbbell stuff? Because I know in the climbing world, traditionally, you know, like bouldering or especially lead climbing, there's some aversion to the barbell. And with speed climbing, you know, at least my point of view, it's a speed power sport. It's very similar in mechanics to jumping and short sprints. and you can't be allergic to the barbell if you want to get better speed and power wise. So what do your lifts usually look like?
It I guess like for a basic strength training phase, like my three favorites are benches, weighted pull-ups, and squats. And like two of the three of those are like the barbell, and then the other one is still like a very just basic
Yes.
pulling movement, you know. And so I think if I don't know, if I were training more for like bouldering, I would definitely forego some of that just because I'm already like pretty strong, and like you don't need like the direct strength. It doesn't play quite as big of a role in like bouldering and lead as it does in speed.
Yeah.
And
You don't really need that contractile velocity for bouldering or lead compared to
yeah,
speed.
I mean it's not that you don't, but like in a lot of ways, depending on like your style, you can make up for it with like technique and other things like that. But for speed, like you need like the basic strength, and then you can apply it pretty directly. You can like it's a much more direct application to the climbing, and like barbell workouts is a great way to do that for me too. I've been experimenting a little bit with like a little more like dumbbell like stabilization stuff, or like just other things that are a little bit more sports specific movements that don't necessarily use like a barbell, but are maybe more like kind of calisthenic oriented, or maybe we'll use like resistance bands instead of a barbell, or like put resistance bands on a barbell or something like that. But still kind of like playing around with it to see like what works for me. So
Cool.
It's always like a work in progress, kind of learning all this stuff.
It's always work in progress. I'm 38. I've been doing this for coaching wise for like about 20 years now in track and field. And every year I'm like, what if I tried this? Like it's like, I've got my degrees and certifications. Like, yeah, I like, the principles, but there's so much room for like the art, the variance, like how to adapt these movements to the specific athlete for what they need. That's where the fun is, especially when you're still learning yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you know how it goes.
Oh yeah. So kind of want to go dive a little deeper into that. So what is your sport experience aside from climbing? Like what do you do outside of climbing these days that's athletic? What sports did you play earlier in life?
When I was little, I played ice hockey for a long time. And so I think like that probably helped me develop at a young age a lot of like leg power, leg strength, stuff like that. And let's see, I wasn't any good. I thought when I was like a little naive kid that I was going to be an NHL player and like the works, but I was in like a house league, like getting knocked around all the time, and I was having a blast. But
That's all that matters at youth.
yeah, but I kind of played around with a lot of stuff. Hockey and karate also were probably like the main two that I stuck with for the longest. But I like tried basketball, I tried baseball, I tried let's I was a skateboarder for a long time. I did a lot of skateboarding. It was so fun.
I still skate. That's like
nice.
That's my guilty pleasure. Like I'm the oldest guy at the skate park.
Oh, it's great. There's a skateboard that hangs around in the training center a lot, and I always like play around on it. It's really fun for me. It's good. See, those were probably my big three, like skateboarding, ice hockey, and karate. And then like when I found climbing, I like kind of overlapped like hockey and karate for a little while, but then it's kind of ironic. My hockey coach was like, well, I was talking to him and I was like, yeah, I'm doing so much. I've got climbing practice this day and hockey practice the other day. And he goes, you know what? You do what you're best at. He was thinking I was going to choose hockey. And I was like, okay, that's a good idea. So then I quit hockey and started climbing.
Well, it's hard to say you didn't make the right choice. So
oh yeah, I'm very happy. Thank you. His name was Josh, actually, Coach Josh. So I
there we go, Coach Josh.
Yeah.
Man, I'm really glad to hear that you're a skateboarder and martial artist, because that was my life. Like, so like my basic like athletic history is like I didn't run track until I was a senior in high school. Went out first meet, set the school record, and then went on to NCAAs and like being an All-American and stuff. But before that was just taekwondo and skateboarding. And like you want to talk about developing awareness of your body and just like falling skills, balance skills, just where your body is in space. nothing beats that. Like you can't convince me that those aren't two of the most athletic things that you can have a kid do and have them transition to whatever sport they want for success.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. That's definitely very true. And I don't know, I'm definitely like I couldn't like do the karate moves anymore or
No.
anything like that. But probably like, yeah, you're right. At like an ingrained level, like because I was doing it when I was a lot younger, a lot of
Mhm.
those like kind of body awareness and like coordination principles carried over
Yeah.
for you too.
So that's actually a good segue into the beta that you use. So like when I know that there's some new top beta out there with that high right foot and everything,
Mhm.
but in general, when you're changing beta, how quickly do you adapt to it?
It always depends on the move, you know.
Mhm.
I feel like it's one thing to be able to do the move that is like the faster beta, but it's
Mhm.
another thing to like do it well enough to make it actually faster for
Right.
you. And so like, oh man, I remember when I was learning the Tomoa skip, I did the move. I was able to do the move right off the bat, but like in order to like get it to where it is now, probably took like a good 6 months in order of just like confidence and it, I mean it's still like kind of like falls away and then comes back and then like maybe like something changes and it's a little bit worse, then I figure it out again
Mhm.
and stuff like that. um and that's not just the Tomoa, but that's also, let's see, probably like the more recent beta switch that I made was kind of the match at the top of the 10 meters,
Sure.
and then you climb into like what the Indonesian guys used to do for the top
Mhm.
section.
Yeah.
um, that one, again, like the sequence was pretty easy, but like connecting it from like the ladder section down lower into that top 5 meter section is
Mhm.
really, really, that was difficult for me to do. And so, um, and I think like it's not necessarily like, can you do this move that's faster sometimes, but also like you have to be confident with it and be able to like do it subconsciously, like without
Mhm.
thinking about it very, very well.
In
And I
different environments too. Can you pull it off when someone is just slightly ahead of you and you're aware that they're ahead of you? Because
yeah,
now you've
yeah.
got that pressure and your body is going to want to revert to whatever motor pattern it is most comfortable with. So if it's not the new beta, you're going to feel all confused when you get through there.
For sure. And then like of course there are little variances in every run. So if you're like a
Mhm.
little bit too far left, you got to know where all the holds are so you can correct. And that takes a long time to learn for me,
Yeah.
for sure.
So like one of the comments that I see a lot when people are watching speed climbing for the first time is, obviously, like, wow, they're so fast, everything like that. But then they dive a little deeper and they notice that, like, well, nobody is looking at where their feet are being placed. Obviously, like to you as an athlete, that's like second nature. Like you just need to know where the hold is, ingrain it so you can start applying pressure, applying that force even before like your foot makes contact with it. Um, but to someone who's never done it before, that is just so foreign to not be looking where you place your feet in order to jump. You run into that a lot with like track and field jumpers. What first instincts is they stare at the board as they're running up to jump. As you get better, you just trust that the board's going to be there when you jump.
Mm.
Um, Now I know you started off in the youth scene, but you also have some coaching experience. So how long do you see that transition, or how difficult is that transition that you notice when climbers are just beginning, moving from the needing to see it to execute to just trusting where their feet are going to be in order to execute, kind of?
Oh man.
So I know
And
that's super specific.
that's a good question. I think it's like, again, it depends on like the athlete and what else they're training and stuff. And
Hmm.
when I've been a coach, like I've never been a coach for like a very speed climbing specific athlete, at least for
Okay.
like a long term kind
Hmm.
of coaching gig. But um I'm thinking of one athlete that I used to coach on ABC who was like so psyched and very, very like his fast twitch muscles were there. But in the beginning when he was learning the route, he was like pretty sloppy and like was like just trying to go without like worrying about where his like feet were being placed or anything like that.
Hmm.
It probably took, oh man, maybe a good 3 months or so of telling this kid to like, all right, slow down, think about what you're doing. And like, it's better to run clean than to try hard at this stage. And once he was able to like find the feet and find the holds, like, of course, like he could use those fast twitch muscles that he already had and just like go.
Right.
And then let's see, that probably took, I don't know. It's hard to put a number to it. Maybe 3 months, 2 months, if I had to guess.
Mhm.
But of course, there's a lot of variables to something like that.
Sure. When you're on the wall in your training, especially new beta, um, what is like your sequence that you go through? Like, do you start off like just with 3 or 4 holds in a row, like bring that down lower part of the wall so you can rep that out? Or are you focusing on like also those linking moves and like and then getting out of that next sequence as well? So you're kind of building it, or is it kind of hit or miss? Like you mean either at a time? Did that question make sense? Like,
Yeah. I think so. Like the process that I would go through first is just to like isolate the movement that I want to change or work on, you know?
mhm,
So I'm not worried about linking it into like climbing lower or higher. And I just like try to do that really well a few times. And then I'm usually able to like set sections at like the training center here or something like that. And so I can practice it just like right off the ground. And so it's accessible and easy.
mhm,
And then once I'm feeling more comfortable with that, then I'll try to start linking sections into it. Usually the first thing that I do is try to climb out of the move that I'm working on. And
sure.
so for like when I was learning the match, it was super easy to just like do like my previous beta into the match. But then because my body position was all wrong, I would end up way over here trying to do the top section, and that's not the best. So
Mhm.
I would mostly try to just like do this move and then climb out of it would be like the most beneficial thing for me in that when I was changing that beta.
Cool.
Uh, but
Um,
it really depends on like kind of what I'm feeling like I need to work on. Like if I'm noticing like a pattern where, oh, my body's way to the left, I need to stay more to the right so I can like do this better. And whether it's easier for me to like start down lower to focus on that or to try to climb out of it and focus on it. It just like really depends on the nature of the move.
sure. And then are you going mostly by feel for like, I felt faster through this, or are you doing any sort of video recording, timing, or measurement for to like judge like your velocity through those sections to like really get like down to like the fine details?
Yeah, kind of all three. All three. I think I video pretty much everything I do. And so
Mhm.
if something felt really fast, I can like go back into the video and go, okay, why did that feel really fast? And like look at like actually what happened.
Mhm.
Um, I don't really time stuff until I am pretty comfortable with it, just to see like where like if I'm like comparing two runs where like one was slow and one felt fast and I need to figure out why. I'll like kind of try to break each thing down by time and go like, okay, which part of this section was a little bit slower or which part of this move was a little bit slower.
Sure.
But I have like little time benchmarks for myself kind of like throughout the route, but
Mhm.
it's um they're not like hard benchmarks, and it's also like not a huge I don't pay as much attention to it as some people do.
Sure.
Maybe I could pay more attention to it and it would be more beneficial, but
Mm.
um
It's such a
that's
fine line to
my
draw.
process so far.
As an athlete, especially if you're like doing the coaching yourself of yourself, it's such a fine line to draw because as soon as you start collecting a bunch of data, you're like, well, do I need to act on this data? And then it just kind of pulls you away from like the workout itself. So
Mhm.
I always ran into that issue myself where it's like, okay, I want to time all of my sprints today. And then you do it, and then you hit it like you feel like, oh, that was fast. And you look at the timer and you're like, oh, that wasn't fast. Well, what does that mean? I felt fast, but it was slow. Like, do I like is my training wrong? Like it just you get into
Mhm.
your head too much. So no, uh like from a personal standpoint, my advice is like, yeah, video time occasionally, but like don't get lost in the numbers because I mean how you feel is gonna be the best dictator of, you know, the quality of the session regardless.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Like if you feel bad and you can like manage to try hard, like doesn't matter what the times are because you're gonna feel good on comp day. And so
Mhm.
just like trust that you can that it's gonna work out, I guess. A lot of trust in the process in that kind of a with that kind of a problem.
Yeah. Um, I know we went over your training. This question's been on the top of my head for like the last like 3 weeks. So I just want to just get right into it. Thoughts on the current fall start rules? especially
Whoa.
when it comes to qualifiers.
Yeah, I hate them. I really hate them.
Thank you.
They're
Like, it is terrible for quality of competition.
it's really bad, and also they don't always use the same timing system at competitions, and so like some timing systems measure it differently than others. Like I know, like I don't know if you watched there was a European Cup in Innsbruck this year, and that
Mhm.
timing system that they use down there, they measure the false start a little bit differently than like the deep run systems do that are at
Yeah.
all the World Cups. And so
Mhm.
there were so many false starts. And at the World Championships, it also that were there were so many false starts. And like there was some math. And then when the Austrian athletes came to Salt Lake and they were like practicing their reaction time, they were like, I don't know why, but my reaction time is so slow. And I was like, yeah, it's because the system that you use is not great.
Oh,
And
man, like, how are you going to introduce variability into the timing system?
yeah, it's just like different people making them different
Mhm.
interpretations of the rules and things like that. And that's only part of the problem, I think. And then because I mean there's no actual reaction time in speed climbing. It is completely predictable.
Right.
So like in sprinting or dive or swimming, like there actually is a reaction time because you
Yeah.
can't predict the starting signal.
Yeah. You've got a guy with a gun that's just starting when he wants to. Like,
Yeah. And we tried that with speed climbing and it didn't work. And so it's just kind of a rule that they kept but shouldn't have, I think.
yeah. And
Yeah.
like, man, like, so one of the things I was talking about with um Tyler and um John, uh why can't wow, I this is terrible. I just completely blanked on the name of the podcast. It's the
It's early in the morning, no
it's
worries.
super early, dude. It's
Yeah.
like I said before we started, I've only had 3 hours of sleep last night. So um yeah, that's gonna really bug me. But regardless, we were talking about the uh the false start rule, and like if you have two runs in qualifiers and you false start in one of them, you're done for the competition. And that doesn't make any sense to me if you're just using qualifiers as a means of finding out who the best athletes are there so that they can race. Um, like, what are your thoughts on, like, do you think that if you false start in qualies, you should be done for the day? Do you think that you should get your second run and that should count?
I think honestly, like as a punishment, like if you false start and like I think it makes sense that you're out, honestly.
Okay.
Uh, because like I mean you just can't. It's a good deterrent to ensure people don't false start.
Mhm.
And also people used to false start on purpose to psych out their competitor.
Right.
And that's kind of a variable that you
Mhm.
don't want to have to deal with as a person because like you can only control so much and
Mhm.
why add another thing that you can't control. So I think that was actually a really good deterrent for people in false starting. But I think that needs to be paired with getting rid of the tenth of a second reaction time limit because that's just
Right.
that's just not that's not a good rule.
It really feels like they pulled a tenth of a second reaction time limit from track because that's what they use. But they're actually going from a true reaction. Like, yes, it is
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
like you're reacting to a gun, but if you're timing the start, it should be a flat zero. It should be as long as you didn't go before the beep, you should be good.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's
So
yeah, so that kind of feels like there's like, well, we need to put together specific rules prior to the Olympics. What's worked in the past, we can just kind of shove these into it and just say that's what we're going to go for. And like you said, they tried the gun, so this might just be a vestige of that, but they have to be able to adapt to like what's actually best for the sport. And I don't think that point one is best for the sport.
yeah, agreed for sure.
So one of the other things that, and it's the debrief, by the way, that's the podcast I was thinking of. But one of the things we talked about was like the final setup. So right now, single elimination. One of the things that we were talking about was like, what are your thoughts on like a double elimination style where, if you lose in the top bracket, you go to the lower bracket and then you could still work your way to the championship or like the finals through the lower bracket by winning out, kind of helping take out some of those variables, especially since it seems like timing systems have some variation in them as well.
Yeah. It definitely kind of sucks to go to a comp and like kind of get knocked out in the first round. And you're like, well, I'm done climbing. I feel like I haven't done anything. Because I feel like a lot of the times when if I go to a competition, I like leave feeling wrecked pretty much no matter what. And sometimes I'll do a speed comp and I'm just like, well, I'm not wrecked at all. I feel like I barely did anything, you know? But yeah, I think that could be super interesting. I think one of the formats that they were playing around with for the Olympics was actually making the elimination round a best like 2 out of 3 kind of thing, at least for the medal rounds.
Sure.
Because otherwise, like, I don't know, if you watch any speed competition, every single one is so different. Crazy things happen. You don't always end up with the fastest climber at the end of the day, but I mean, that's okay. I mean, that's just competition anyway.
Right.
But also I think you would be able to have a little bit more of a consistent pool of like these fastest climbers in the top if there were a little bit more room for error with like maybe giving people a couple more races to do.
Yeah. So I know I just kind of spotted some of my ideas at you. What are your ideas on ways that speed climbing can improve as a sport, whether it comes to competition setup, when it comes to, World Cups, how many there are, where they are? Like, what would you do different than what they're doing right now?
That's a big question. I think the first thing that comes into my head when I think about that is like increasing the margin for error just a little bit, kind of like what we just talked about. Let's see. The competition season, at least internationally, is also really long. It like starts in April and goes through like July, and then there's like a 2-month break, and then there's always like a couple in the fall in like September and October, and that's like it's a long season, and it gets exhausting for sure. And as opposed to like, oh, it could just be like over the summer or like in the spring or in the fall, and it would be like a little bit more predictable, a little bit easier to like peak for a shorter amount of time, I think. But I mean, right now everybody's dealing with logistics and it's difficult, and I won't complain about traveling for even longer through the year than normal, but trying to be in the best shape possible for that long like is definitely exhausting.
Yeah.
Like you start out all psyched, and then it like maybe like one comp goes not your way or a second comp goes not your way, and you're like, oh man, this is really draining now. I'm ready to chill. And like, so you got to strategize really, really carefully with how it is now. But I think a shorter season would be a good improvement for the sport for sure.
Yeah, or if they're going to keep the seasons like the way it is, like it almost make more sense to have like there's the US World Cup circuit where you could have like kind of like, Salt Lake City had 2 comps in a row, but like maybe you do like 3 or 4 comps over like a 6-week period in the US, short break to let people travel like back home and stuff, then a short European circuit, and then maybe there's a short Asian circuit, like, and maybe to allow athletes to be able to, well, I don't know how to solve it. Let's be honest. Like,
No worries.
But I can definitely see that because, again, just drawing parallels to like the college track season, we're going to start our first competitions in December, and the last competition is the end of May, and so that's 6+ months, and we start training this week so it is practice now all the way through May. And if you do really well and you qualify for USA's, congratulations, you're also competing through June. It's a long season, and people that haven't competed in a season that goes that long in a specific sport don't understand the levels of burnout you get like 3-4 months into it when you've been doing the same thing over and over again, because you have to maintain your sharpness, you have to maintain your ability to just like execute on demand, which means that you are just operating out of a small funnel of workouts to keep yourself sharp. And it's long, it's dragging, it's not as fun or as glamorous as it necessarily looks like it is during competition day.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and like, yeah, there's a lot of impossible problems in the world, like how do we convince all these like venues to host on different days or things like that. But and like to your point earlier, they do the kind of like localized like seasons a little bit already. Like they do like they did the 2 Salt Lake World Cups, and then there's like a bunch of comps in Western Europe in like June, July, kind of that same area. The fall competitions are all usually in Asia, and so at least the traveling is a little bit easier that way.
Sure.
But yeah, you're training for a long time in speed climbing, just like in a lot of other sports, like you said.
All right. So I know we've talked a lot about speed climbing. Obviously, it's a speed climbing podcast, but I want to talk a little bit more about you, and more specifically, your coffee addiction. I mean, I'm not
I would
saying
love to talk to you about my coffee addiction.
I'm not saying that I'm not addicted to coffee, but like this is my desk this morning. Like,
oh wow. Oh man.
So like it's a thing. But like I've got 2 kids and I'm old. So like my body just runs on caffeine and anger at this point. So I know I see on race days, see you brewing your espresso into your Ferrari cup. Like, let's talk about that. Tell me how you got into coffee, what your favorite type of coffee is. And
oh man. So I first started drinking coffee in college, of course. And when I was a freshman moving into the dorms, my roommate brought his espresso machine from home, and because he was already a coffee drinker and he was making coffee a bunch, and we actually ran a little coffee shop out of our dorm room. And so our little whiteboard, like on the front, was just the menu of like, we had all the flavor syrups like Starbucks, and we sold like espresso for $1, a latte for like $2 or something, and or you could get top ramen for $1.50 was kind of
definitely beating the on-campus food service.
Oh yeah, we had our consumer base targeted for sure. And that was kind of fun, and I definitely started drinking coffee with that. I tried my first shot of espresso from that machine and I hated it. It was terrible. But then from that point on, I could drink just like normal black drip coffee because it wasn't as bad as espresso.
Sure.
And then I had enough of that, and then I acquired the taste, and then espresso was good, and now it's all I drink. Now it's my favorite for sure. Yeah.
Nice. So I'm assuming you got your own espresso machine then. Like, what type of espresso machine are you using? It's like a small little guy, or do you have like one of those? Oh, are you gonna show me?
I'll show you. It's this guy right here.
Oh, very nice. You've got the hopper on top. Does it self grind?
It self grinds. You just like kind of like, I just like kind of weigh out the beans, pour it in the grinder, and then it just like grinds right into like the filter.
Nice.
And it's great. It's called the Breville Barista Express. It's not sponsored content or anything. I just love it.
That's okay. If they see this and they want to sponsor you, I'm sure you probably wouldn't turn that down.
No, we would not turn that down. But let's see. I got it at Bed Bath & Beyond with a 20% off coupon, and it was a pretty reasonable price, honestly, for how long it's lasted me and how like good it's been. So I'm psyched about it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Definitely looking to upgrade at some point. Like as my addiction grows and my enthusiasm grows, like I'm definitely ready for the next big thing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Some big old like $3,500 DeLonghi on there, like on your countertop, where you can just dial in your PSI and get the perfect pull.
Oh yeah, it would be great. All this money I'm making from speed climbing is really good.
Yes.
Is really accelerating that process, making it easier for sure.
Just living at large off those fat speed climbing comp paychecks.
You know it best. It's good. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you started drinking coffee in college. What did you go to college for?
I right now I'm a kinesiology major.
Nice.
I've kind of bounced around a little bit. I started out doing business, and that wasn't my thing, and then I switched to biology, and that wasn't my thing, and then I like took a break for a couple of years, and I'm like slowly trickling my way, and I still haven't graduated, but
it's all right.
Yeah, not too worried about it at the moment.
I did a 2-year gap year after high school because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to be. Like
Hmm.
I was a roofer for a little bit. Like I was like, wow, that's not a job I want. So went back to college,
Hmm.
did the whole college thing, and that's when I started drinking coffee too.
Yeah.
Now this was, I'm dating myself because I was in college in the 2000s, but so I had my espresso machine, and I had it hooked up to one of those old fashioned like wall timers that like it would like slowly turn, and when it hit a certain time, it would turn on. So like I would set up the espresso the night before, and 6:30 a.m. would hit, and boom, just
Oh, that's so cool.
so like it was my alarm
Oh, nice.
clock, and then I'd have fresh espresso first thing in the morning. So
That that's pretty nice.
that
That's
was yeah, I that's when the coffee addiction started, because I mean you really can't make it through college without coffee. Like
no.
if you can, you're a psycho. I don't even know if I could be friends with you because you're not a normal person if you don't drink coffee.
Fair. Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, it's
So
a
I know
staple in our household for sure.
one other thing that I know you brought up that you wanted to kind of talk about. I'm just going to jump into it. You has had a health issue pop up that kind of affected your climbing and your training. So, did you want to jump into that or?
Yeah. So let's see. In 2020, like kind of like right when COVID hit and the pandemic started, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is basically just like chronic colon inflammation. And when your colon is inflamed, it doesn't work. And so that's kind of the gist of like the very simple explanation of like kind of what's going on.
Mhm.
And I got like really, really sick pretty fast. And I was at home, I was like losing weight, couldn't really eat. And let's see, I couldn't climb. And this was, I was kind of lucky because it was during COVID. So other than like the pandemic scares, I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything, which was
Mhm.
pretty nice. But at the same time, I was like kind of bedridden for like a couple months. And eventually I was on steroids that got me a little bit better, and I could start climbing again when the gyms opened up. And it was like this whole crazy new sport because I had lost so much weight. I had lost all my muscle mass. I was like doing it totally differently, and like I was good at slab. I like couldn't do pull-ups. I was like using my hips to like get around to reps and stuff. And I was like, what's happening? This is so different. I love this. And so it was as big of a health issue and scare as it was, it kind of like helped me fall in love with climbing all over again. And I was dealing with like some like mental health, some burnout before that too. And that like along with the pandemic, that forced break, like really did a lot for me mentally and like brought my psych back to a level that I didn't even realize it had like retreated from because
Mhm.
it's been so long. And so I think like that something I still struggle with, of course, because it's a chronic illness, but I'm pretty lucky in the fact that it's like super manageable and I can't and it doesn't usually affect like my training or my climbing or like my quality of life as long as I keep it under control, which is I'm pretty lucky for that.
Sure.
Um, but also like had it not happened to me, I probably would have just like kind of kept like banging my head against the wall trying to get faster, not taking breaks, and it would have been um I don't know. I would be in a very different spot than I am now, for sure.
Well, I mean, obviously, you never want health issues to happen to anyone, but it sounds like you're able to like come away with a really good perspective and a better appreciation for, your health as well as for the sport again.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of turned into something that was at the first time, oh, like I have to like keep up my reputation. I have to do this. And it turned it from that to like, oh wow, I get to rock climb. This is really special. I get to compete in speed climbing at a high level. I get to train as hard as I can every day. And it feels much more like a choice than it used to. And so that was something that was really, really good for me, beneficial for me.
That I love hearing when athletes let their whether it's by choice or from, circumstance, like their ego dies. And we all have an ego. Like if you're good at what you do, you have to be invested in that investment. Like it builds up in you, and if you don't keep it in a good place, it's really easy to just get overwhelmed when you start not doing as well as you feel like you should be. And then now you're training out of spite. Now you're training out of like, I need to do this. I need to get better. You have your reputation to uphold, etc. And when when you can let that go and just train because it's like you enjoy it, it's so freeing. So,
Mhm.
and it's better for the
Definitely.
long-term health of the athlete too, mental health especially. Like, it's going to allow you, when you do transition on from speed climbing to whatever you choose to do later in life, once it's that ego's kind of already taken that hit and you kind of been able to push that to the side, it's going to be easier to transition into whatever your professional career is after this. That's one of the biggest things that I see in college track. It happened to myself. It's happened to my athletes in the past. You've wrapped your identity around one sport specifically, one event, etc. Like that's who you are. It's the biggest part of you. And when you can no longer do it anymore, like who are you? Like you have to kind of reinvent yourself. And that's a tough process to go through.
It is. It really is for sure. But the crazy thing is, like, for so long, like that kind of like that mindset, like I am my sport, like serves athletes quite a lot.
It
But
does.
it like kind of like, I don't know, it's motivating in like in a very, very like kind of life or death way, which
Mhm.
is like great for athletic performance for a certain amount of time,
Yes.
but it's not a sustainable mindset. As like you learn and grow as a person, like you'll
Mhm.
inevitably like kind of crash and burn. And
Right.
so I think the athletes that last are the ones that are able to transition from that into more of a, okay, like this is fun. I get to do this. If they're able to look at it from like a more joyful way than an identity oriented way, then I think that's the recipe to a long and successful career.
Agreed. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm so just adamant about quality coaching, just regardless of the sport. Like, so like my master's degree is in coaching, and this obviously is what's informing my point of view on this, aside from my experience as an athlete. But like coaching is not just knowledge of the sport. It is not just I can put together a training plan. It is how do I manage these people and develop them as a person in light of performing well in their sport. Because if you're not developing them as people, like you're literally just no different than a PDF someone could download online and just get a training plan. Like what role are you serving? No, coaches develop people, not just athletes. It's the person part that's like the most important. So um any like I'm sure you having your experience that's going to carry on for you if you decide to keep coaching or do anything further with coaching in your life. So it makes me excited for your future athletes.
Yeah, thank you. That's yeah, it's a lesson that everybody has to learn the hard way, I think, in order for it to really sink in. And
Hmm.
it's gonna suck. It really sucks, but I mean it's a turning point in anyone's growth as a person and in life.
Yeah.
And it's super important for sports too. Because if you want to keep going, you got to have a good relationship with yourself. And so
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Because otherwise, I mean, you hear stories all the time like, well, people getting busted doing drugs, like doping, etc. And it's 9 times out of 10 people that don't have that good relationship with themselves and like their identity, their self-worth is so ingrained with winning that they're willing to take that step to cheat in order to keep winning, even though it's going to shorten your life, it's going to reduce your health later on in life. Like when you get caught, you're banned from the sport. Now you've got a stigma put on every one of your performances, even if you had good ones before you cheated. Like, but people make that step because they don't have that sense of self-worth. They have everything tied to their performance. So like it is that fine line because it drives performance. It keeps you waking up in the morning hungry to do better. But if you don't have anything reeling you in from stepping over that edge, like it's a pretty quick fall.
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely true.
So one thing I wanted to chat about was 5.20. Now the world record is, five flat. How do you feel about your performances this year before your ankle injury? And like, did you feel like you were on path to also continue getting to like, 5.1 under 5.1 to keep pace with, the Indonesians and the Chinese?
Yeah, I think I was on the path for sure. I definitely think that I can go sub 5.2, sub 5. Like I for sure think that I can do it. But it was definitely kind of a bummer when I injured my ankle, but it also was like a little bit of a welcome break because I like was kind of starting to realize like, oh wow, I didn't realize like kind of how burnt out I was feeling, because
Mhm.
I didn't really give myself a proper break after 2021. I kind of just like finished the World Cups, did nationals, did Pan Am, straight into training for the next season. And I was psyched at the time, but it was it definitely starting to take a toll by the summer, you know.
Yeah.
And, but the ankle was as frustrating as it was.
Mhm.
It was definitely like a nice change of pace in a weird way that I didn't fully come to terms with until like well into the process, but I did eventually. So yeah, I was in Edinburgh and Jakarta thinking like, oh man, all these times, all these like this would be such a cool comp to like go so fast in, and like especially in Jakarta, everybody was so fast and so psyched, and
Mhm.
speed climbing is huge in Indonesia. So I was there definitely feeling like, wow, I wish that I could have been in better shape for this, because this feels really special, you know. Um, but I think I was on the path, but I can definitely be on that path again. I think I
Mhm.
just gotta focus on healing the ankle now.
Right.
But um
How's it feeling?
pretty good. I think like the actual ligament that I injured is mostly healed,
Okay.
but I'm still getting a lot of strength back and a lot of like proprioception back.
Yeah.
I went to Edinburgh and I like could barely jump on one foot. And I was like, oh man, just go, just climb. If you get a 7, I don't care. Just that was kind of my mindset while I was there. Just like go get the points for the ranking and like let it serve its purpose and enjoy Scotland. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And so when I hit 5.6 in qualifiers, I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, oh my God, this is, I like could hardly believe it, because I had gotten like 1 or 2 sub 6 times in practice, like since the World Games in July. And then I was like in the mid fives again when like, geez, dude, this is, I
Hey,
felt,
that's a good sign for the next season though, because like that's your baseline. That's your new baseline. Like,
yeah, I'm psyched about that for sure. Um, so that was a cool moment, definitely. And then in Jakarta, it was definitely feeling quite a bit better than it was in Edinburgh, because I
mhm.
was able to do some more like power stuff and more jumping and impact stuff with it. Um, but it was just like kind of the nature of like had a bad first run, wanted to just like go clean, and 5.63 is normally enough, but that time it wasn't. And so
Right.
yeah, but um, but anyway, it's doing much better now. I think if I weren't a professional athlete, I would consider it healed at this point.
Sure.
But I mean, like you ankles are weird, and like especially as a speed climber, we're like demanding a lot from it every day. And so I'm just
Yeah.
like working on getting the strength back. I'm doing some like one-legged calf raises now, and that's pretty much it. Just so like my calf can be the same size as my other one again. But
Oh, I'm
um
sure that dude, muscles atrophy so quickly.
mhm.
They
Yeah,
do.
yeah. They really
It's
do.
crazy.
But yeah, it's getting there. I think I'm on like definitely the home stretch. And the plan is like by the time I start training for next season, it'll be 100%. So it won't be an issue.
Excellent. So next season, what are you thinking?
It's gonna be I think it's gonna be sick. Everybody that I've talked to is like, oh, it's gonna be so hard. It's gonna be, and like, yeah, it's gonna be hard, but like that's like nobody in this sport has ever encountered a challenge like that before. Like qualifying for the Olympics, training for a long time for like a very, very high stakes and like more real thing than any speed climbers have ever like gotten to like aspire to before.
Mhm.
And so like, yeah, it's going to be hard, and like everybody's going to be going 110%, but also like it's going to be sick. It's going to be
Ah,
really, really cool. So I'm feeling very psyched, feeling very confident, as long as I can stay healthy. And um yeah, as long as I can stay healthy, like I'll put the work in, and I'm feeling pretty good.
good. Like, man, the spotlight now, speed climbers can just shine on their own, no mixed, and it's going to bring out such another level of competition. And like, I'm still so like looking at from like a worldview type of thing, um certain countries have talent ID programs like that are like well known, but like every Olympic year the fields get deeper, deeper and deeper. It doesn't matter the sport. And it is just such a different level of psych for any sport that gets to shine at the Olympics. But for having speed climbing to be able to debut as its individual event, not as combined, is like, I have to imagine that I really do think that we're probably going to see close to sub 6 on the women's side for the Olympics, because it's going to be that level of psych. And like sub 5 is going to happen routinely. Like it's going to happen. You look at how close everyone is right now, and it just keeps getting to the next level. It just makes me so excited just as a spectator to be able to see the progression happening. So as an
Yeah.
athlete, you're feeling that psych too.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very cool. I was shocked that sub 5 didn't happen this season. Honestly, I was very, very surprised. That last race at the Jakarta World Cup with Aspar and Kiramal, I was like, I'm not normally one to like pull out my phone and film races, but I was like, okay, this one's going to be special in some way.
I did a little video analysis of that, put it into like so I used Canovia for biomechanical analysis and just put the video in there. And Kiermal was on pace or slightly faster than his world record run before he slipped. So like that was a sub 5 run. It was going to happen. But, you also saw Kiermal switch beta for the top and compared to when he did his 5 flats. So I also have to imagine that his prior beta was so ingrained that now you're not just thinking about like the beta when you're there, but linking to it. So your mind's going to be on that, like even lower down the wall, it's going to add some possible for inconsistencies. And you kind of saw that, like he just wasn't himself as soon as he hit like the middle of the wall for those races. So
yeah, I think sometimes like when you get into when you're like trying that hard, sometimes like your arms will go faster than your legs or something like that. And so it looks like his body position was just a little bit weird. Yeah, I imagine like at that point, if he were confident enough to do that beta at a World Cup, he would be like pretty ingrained with it, hopefully. But also like sometimes when you're pushing that hard, you lose the coordination of like your upper and lower halves a little bit. And so you're just like in a slightly different spot than you're used to. And that's kind of like was what was happening.
And
but
if it's, if you really are on world record pace, like you're doing these moves at a velocity that you maybe have never hit before. So your coordination is already off at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that it was so close, if not faster. Because I mean, what 5.0 and 4.99, that's the same run, And so
yes, definitely.
I'm not surprised that he was on pace. But
right.
Also it's gonna be more than just him, more than just the Indonesian team and the Chinese team next year. So it's gonna be cool to see.
So put out some, I know you're an athlete, so it's hard to like cast out predictions that don't include yourself, but do you have any like favorites for next year or like dark horses that you're like, this person's coming up and they're gonna really break through this next year?
Yeah, I want to see Sam Watson kill it. I want to see him just like, I mean, he already did come out of his shell quite a lot this year, but like I want to see him like really come into his own. And I'm psyched to see what he can do if he can stay psyched and try hard, which like from his personality and like drive, like I think he'll do it for sure. Also, I mean, I can only root for the Americans, I guess. That's not true. I'm psyched to see what Emma can do, as always. Let's see. Eric Noya has been pretty cool to watch. He used to live in Venezuela, and we had a long chat in Jakarta. Actually, I got to know him quite a bit better, and he moved to Spain, and he's an older athlete. And I actually made the connection recently that we competed in youth Pan Ams in 2012 together, not in the same category, but he was he lives in Spain now, but he was competing for Venezuela in 2012. Wow. And now he's still going, still pushing the limits like pretty well, pretty hard. But yeah, I think speed climbing especially, it's so hard to predict I've kind of learned to stop predicting competitions because anything can happen, you know?
Right.
All I do know is like which athletes are going to try really, really freaking hard.
Perfect. All right, John, is there anything that you want to talk about? Anything on your mind that we didn't touch?
No, this was pretty thorough, I think. Yeah, we hit all the important points. I'm pretty psyched.
Cool. Well, you've been a great guest. Do you have any sponsors or anything that you need to shout out or anything that you want to put out there? Tell somebody to go buy something.
Yeah. Mad Rock Mora's best speed shoe in the game. That's for sure. Let's see. Mad Rock has been really good to me. True Blue, best auto belays in the game. They've been really good to me. Yeah, I'm feeling psyched and lucky to have good people behind me supporting me. So
heck yeah. Do you have a Mad Rock like referral, like athlete link or anything like that? Because I can put that in the the doobly beneath.
I don't think I do, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I don't know. If I do, I'll send it to you later.
Cool.
I'll look. Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's been great having you on. This will be up later this week, but do you ever just have a brain fart and just like what just happened there?
Yeah.
That was me right there.
Every day. No worries.
Yeah. It's not a very fluid transition to the end of the podcast yet. So I'll probably just like fade this off into the distance to some like soft music and just call it done there.
Nice. Some rainbows and some sunflowers. Yeah. Great. Love that idea.
Excellent.